All righty, boys and girls, welcome back to a solo episode of the Red, White, Claret, and Blue Show with your host, Alex Baquero. Christopher, the nurse Condit, is taking care of a sick child. He will be back tomorrow with a solo pod to preview our match against Go Ahead Eagles, arguably the greatest name of any team we have ever faced other than Young Boys. And so I am here as your solo American villain voice, serving up the lukewarmest of lukewarm opinions as we recap the match against Spurs this past weekend. As we say always, please go follow, like, rate, review, and subscribe in all the locations now below just my head alone. If you are on YouTube, please go listen on Spotify and vice versa. Same thing with Apple Podcasts. We are in all the places, and so please come engage with us. And you know what? Life is life, and I'm here alone, and so we're gonna skip with the pleasantries where I update you on what's going on with my life, and we're just gonna jump right into it. To be completely honest, because that's what Spurs did on Sunday. They really leapt right into it. But before we get into that very early goal that Villa gave up, let's talk about the tactical setup. So Amadou Onana came in for Lamar Bogard. That was certainly one that caught me probably a little bit by surprise. Bogard had been playing well. Emery does seem to be someone to trust the players in form. So I was surprised that he got thrown to the bench. Not only that he got thrown to the bench, but that he didn't really come in and play a factor at all, especially considering Onana's struggles. You know, we made it all the way down into Ross Barkley getting some time in a game where we were trying to shut things down. And given Bogard, you know, he's not a center back, but as far as a midfielder is concerned, he's pretty good defensively. I would argue better than Ross Barkley, but you know what? Maybe Emery's trying to get some minutes in the legs there. Ali not healthy from that bone bruise, so we got Malen up top with Gasson on right wing, and McGinn went to the left wing. Rogers in the center. So let's talk a little bit about what this does for the formation that Villa had. For me, I'm well on record as saying that I do not like John McGinn on the wing. Don't think it's where he's most effective. He's having an unbelievable season, I think, due to nostalgia and just the love that the fan base has for him. He's probably winning player of the season so far, but still doesn't make him a winger. And, you know, I probably would have kept him in the 10 spot or potentially playing for Onana in the defensive sitting midfield. But as I said before the game and coming out of the match against Burnley, I actually liked McGinn in less so of a 10-second striker and more as like a 10-8 attacking midfielder role, because it gave Rodgers the freedom to move. Now, that being said, if you needed me to pick between the two wings, I much prefer in this system McGinn on the left wing as opposed to the right wing. He's not beating anyone for pace down the right-hand side, but in that left spot where he isn't really an auxiliary forward, he's more of an attacking midfielder. He can receive the ball, he can turn, he can pick a pass, all that kind of stuff, all the stuff that he does very well. So I think that served him much better than when he was ultimately moved out to the right later on in the game. And you know, let's talk about Malen and Gasson. We all know that Malen did not work up top, and you know, Ali came on and showed why he is a true number 9. I've seen some comments online that are kind of saying like, essentially, Malen ain't that good. Malen shouldn't have started. You know, project over. We know who the better striker is. Yeah, because Malen is not a striker. He's not a number 9. So you're playing him out of position there. And so that's why I said going into the game that I felt like he should maintain his spot on the right wing, playing as the second striker. And Gasson isn't necessarily performing in any way, so throw him up top. Now, why did Emery do this? I think what Emery thought is that Evan Gasson is a much better defender than Daniel Malen. Whereas Daniel Malen is playing a right inside forward secondary striker, Gasson is going to play a pure right wing. And so what he does when Villa defend in their more flat 4-4-2, he can provide Matty Cash a lot of cover on the right-hand side. You saw how far forward Matty Cash was getting in the game. We talked in the lead up about how Spurs really like to attack down the wings. So I think what Emery's thought process was in putting Rodgers centrally and Mullen up top, take your two weakest defensive links, defensive pieces, and keep them where the opposition isn't going to attack you. You have John McGinn on the left-hand side providing cover for Luka Dean. You have Evan Gasson on the right-hand side providing cover for Matty Cash. So I think that this change was done probably astutely with more of a defensive mentality than an attacking one. And so as a result, we also didn't see much of that 3-2-3-2 that we saw in the Burnley match, much more of a standard buildup in the formation. I think Unai didn't necessarily want to pull too many people out of their position and leave them scrambling when Spurs tried to counter, because Spurs did counter and they countered quickly. So I don't want to talk about it again, but goal 5 minutes in. Now, we've played what, 10 games so far this season, maybe a couple more. We've already given up goals 3 times in the first 15 minutes, 30%, give or take. That's absurd. Um, and you know, this repeated a pattern of Villa starting matches incredibly slowly. It 30 minutes, probably saying Villa had no attacking impetus whatsoever. Spurs, as we expected, made themselves tough to break down. They defended resolutely. We barely got near their goal, but for a few corners, and we really didn't look great offensively. And this was epitomized by Amadou Onana. Really, really poor first half from him. I know he's been out of the team for a little while, but I think magnifying glass on that performance, given how well Bogart had done in that role in the lead up to this match. But bad pass for the corner. And then actually one thing that I haven't necessarily seen too many people talk about, Bentancur is actually his man on on the ensuing set piece. And so he's the one who loses him on that secondary run into the box, recycled back around. You know, he constantly was turning it over in midfield, either off the dribble or off the pass. Just really, really tough first half from him. And, you know, definitely saw a theme throughout this. Thomas Frank was set piece master at Brentford, and you saw how much they value that, and the fact that they made their set piece coach their full-time coach. We can talk another time about whether that was actually a good decision or not, but still they believed in it. And Spurs dominated Villa on the set pieces all game long. It felt like every single time they were getting a clear-cut opportunity, Villa might win the initial header, but Spurs always had a man ready for the recycled ball and created more opportunities off of that. So they were not lethal on the day. We talked about their actually fairly poor chance creation in the lead up. They created a few chances through this in this game. If we were playing someone like Arsenal, I mean, we're probably 4-0 down at the break by the time Rodgers gets that goal. So that's something that I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on in the coming games, is Villa's set piece defending, because it really seems like great going forward, but whatever Unai does, and we've said this before, it's been a hallmark for him his entire career, does not defend set pieces well. Now, that being said, other than that, Villa defended fairly well. You know, at halftime, Spurs only had 3 shots, 2 on target, something like that. Villa, I think, pressed high when it was available. Granted, that was rare, but they did. They showed that impetus as we've wanted them to do. And, you know, more so than in recent weeks, they definitely stayed organized and composed at the back. A lot of clearances, won all their headers. You saw Luka Dean and Matty Cash getting crunched on really important defensive headers at different points in the game. And, you know, Spurs definitely looked to get behind. Kudus, I feel like, was continually trying to run past Luka Dean, but offside trap worked well. You know, they had a couple times to get him behind. They almost made it 2-0. But They were always caught off sides. So, credit to the team for knowing when to step up and executing that to perfection. Other way, Villa kept trying to go in behind, and I have no idea why they tried to do this. I think Mickey Van de Ven is the fastest defender in the Premier League. He's probably arguably one of the fastest players in the Premier League. And yet, whenever Villa tried to play Malen or Gasson in behind, it always seemed to be on Van de Ven's side. It's just stupid. I don't know what the attacking plan was there, but it was it was becoming frustrating, and it really didn't seem like we knew where the goal was going to come from. But moment of magic from a really really talented player, regardless of what his form is this year. Form is temporary, but class is permanent. Morgan Rogers, you know, kind of out of nowhere. Spurs were defending resolutely. Villa's passing was pretty sloppy, but we get the ball, we get the turnover. He holds it up perfectly. And, I'm probably, if I'm a Spurs fan, looking at Vicario a little bit for his positioning. In my opinion, he was a little too far to the left, but that's still a great goal. Nothing taken away from him. And so, you know, we go into the half 1-1 and we got a shot. We got a shot. And so we start the second half. And unfortunately, it's more of the same. If anything, Spurs ratcheted up their attack and their pressure. They really had their ears pinned back and were raring to go. And you saw early in that half, Villa had to weather the storm. There was a lot of scrambling, a lot of last minute blocks. You saw Esri Konsa, take one off, really off his hand, but off his chest. And the Spurs are creating from set pieces. They're creating from long throws. You saw one long throw go in. I don't know where Emi Martinez thought he was going, but he gets, honestly, I'm not even going to say he gets knocked over. He flops outside the net. I think that's actually the one that went off at Konsa's chest. But you had the other one that flashed across the goal, and Matthias Tell just, I don't know, stopped running, could have ran right through it into the net. And, at this point in where Villa are at, you need some of these lucky breaks to go your way. And sometimes you say you'd rather be lucky than good, but like, let's call a spade a spade. Again, lukewarmiest of lukewarm podcasts. Villa are getting incrementally better as the year goes on. Absolutely, without a doubt. But I don't think that you can say that Villa were unequivocally the better team over 90 minutes. And a team that is in Spurs that is getting very lucky in terms of their shot conversion, their finishing, their defense, all that kind of stuff. Their luck is about to run out. And so, we took advantage of that. And at this point, we can't necessarily complain about how pretty or not pretty the wins look. You just got to stack up wins and continue to get better and continue to get to the point where you can dominate a game for 90 minutes. What was funny to me was that the announcer's curse, I think, kind of struck Spurs, let's say within the first 15, 20 minutes of the second half, said something along the lines of, they say when you're on top, you have to score. And Spurs have yet to score despite all this dominance. And you know what? They never did. Villa got the stops where they needed. They got the blocks where they needed. They got the clearances where they needed. And they rode a little bit of luck to make sure that they didn't concede that second. So, you know, shout out again to Pau Torres and John McGinn. Great players. Thought they both had excellent games on Sunday. And you saw this in the second half when Torres, his ability to just create from that center back spot that honestly no one else on the team can create the way he does. So the line breaking pass that he has to John McGinn, who could play it out wide to, I think it was Luka Dean streaking out there, but he waits, he holds, he has the patience, he realizes that there's no one within 10 yards of him the way that Pau Torres picked him out. And he's able to wait and slide a perfect ball into Malen making the run in behind. I actually thought Malen did pretty well with this, considering the pace that he's running at and where the pass was kind of taking him to fire into the side netting. Unfortunately, that was really the only opportunity to get on the ball that he got. Like I said, cut a very isolated figure. Villa did not really do much in the attacking third to create for him. We've again said this all year long about Ollie Watkins as well, but he tried to take the one chance that he got. Now, almost immediately after that, right, Buendia and Watkins come on, and Buendia makes his instant impact with dribbling. McGinn goes to the right wing, and we all know I hate McGinn on the right wing. As well as he was playing, I don't understand why you bring Mullen off in that situation, knowing he's coming off of a 2-goal game and hasn't really been able to affect change at the number 9. I personally would have brought on Buendia, moved Mullen to the right wing, and brought off, let's say, either Gasson and Rogers, and maybe put McGinn centrally, or I would have brought off Gasson and Onana and put McGinn at central midfield. You know, I speculated, and I would have loved to get Chris's opinion on this, whether Unai feels like if you're running central striker all game long, it's hard for you to change your mentality to adapt to play that right inside forward or that right winger. And maybe, but you're moving John McGinn all around the field. He'll go from left wing to right wing to center midfield to left back at some point in certain games. So you trust some guys to do it, not others. The only thing that I can come up with at this point is that Unai felt like he still needed the defensive cover for Matty Cash, and that's why he put McGinn over there. Chris always says he'd rather win 2-1 than draw 1-1, and is willing to risk losing 2-1 in an effort to win 2-1. I said a lot of numbers there, but I hope somebody followed that. Point is, I wonder if this is a change in mentality for Unai Emery, in that he was much more willing in this situation to draw 1-1 with Spurs in London, knowing that that is a very good result for Aston Villa right now. And so he didn't want to put too much emphasis in the attack. That's an explanation that I could buy and would be willing to accept. But anyway, so Villa get their break when we switch corner takers from John McGinn. It really sounds like I'm piling on John McGinn. He had a great game, guys. Loved John McGinn. Not so great in the corners. He played one way too long in the first half. Just wasn't playing very dangerous balls. And so there was one corner where we switched to Luka Dean. And when we switched to Luka Dean, we got a good ball in. Ultimately, we get it out to Matty Cash, who, credit to him, pings a picture perfect ball to Luka Dean. I don't know how he gets up there to settle it. There was a famous Kavica Kvaratskhelia settle from last year where he kind of jumped up and did the same thing. I mean, photocopy it for Luka Dean, and then has the presence of mind to have that quick second touch to Emi Buendia, who holds on to it perfectly and just fires into the corner. Before I talk about Emi Buendia and the love that I've had for him since before this season started, I want to give a shout out to Matty Cash, rightfully getting a lot of plaudits online as our man of the match. You have probably seen since then he's signed a new 5-year deal, option for another after that. I believe the quote is that the club and Unai Emery see him as an absolutely crucial part of the team moving forward. And listen, is Matty Cash the best right back in the league? No, we all know that. But the hate that he gets, the he'll probably mess up in the next game, and immediately people will be saying that we need to upgrade the right back position. Dude is very solid. He's a good squad player. The guys in the locker room seem to love him. And listen, he comes through with some performances, man. Not just this pass, but like I said, towards the end of the game, Spurs are threatening. They put a great ball into the box, and he puts his body on the line to get the header. You can never doubt the man's commitment to the shirt and to the club. And so for me, in the squad, there is always going to be a place for a Matty Cash. So anyway, Emi Buendia, 4 goal contributions in his last 4 or 5 games, I believe. God, what a player. We talked about his tenacity before. You just love a guy that wants to stay and fight for his spot and is willing to start, is willing to come off the bench. I think he brings, we've got other creative players. Morgan Rogers is creative, Danielle Mullins creative, Evan Gasson is creative. I don't think anyone else is quite as creative in the same way as Emi Buendia. The way that he dribbles when he releases the ball, the passes that he's looking for. I don't know that there's anyone else on the team that really does what he does. And so you will all remember I predicted 15 goal contributions for him by the end of the season across all competitions. And uh the way he's looking, I'm feeling pretty good about that prediction. But I think for me, he's now slotted into, most people know Leon Bailey was my favorite player in the squad for the past couple seasons. I think that's Emi Buendia now. So we'll see where that goes from here. But just know that he is officially in the circle of trust for me. I don't want to hear you speak ill on his name, um, because man, after the injury that he went through when it was looking like he was really going to be a linchpin, you know, all credit to him for fighting through him. All credit to him. Um, Ollie comes on. Let's talk a little bit about him. Thought he made some good runs, created, held up the ball a little bit. Clearly a superior number 9 to Daniel Malen. Um, Still not all right with him. We're still not seeing the Ollie Watkins of years past, and you kind of see that in the 89th minute. He's running in on goal. He's got Van de Ven in front of him. McGinn is running behind, screaming at him. He can't be more than like 10 yards back. And in that spot with that amount of space, you need Ollie to be patient, to hold up that ball, let McGinn make the overlapping run, and see what Van de Ven does. Make him make a decision. Now, at that point, Van de Ven might run with McGinn. You might still get the shot, or you might release McGinn in behind for a little dink over the goalie, or so what have you. Instead, again, continuing this theme of Ali not being great when he has time to think, he rushes it, um, fires wide, and McGinn screams at him, and you see them kind of fight. Uh, Other than that, thought he was very good, but just want to point out, like, we've still got a little ways to go before we get the old Ollie Watkins back. Hopefully he can play Thursday against Go Ahead Eagles and bang in a goal or two, because we thought he was going to get going after last one. Hasn't yet, but still clearly, based on Sunday, a crucial member of the squad in his ability to hopefully create for others. Um, and that's kind of all I got on the game. So, if we're going to talk good points, bad points, we came from behind to win. That showed some real mettle, and that's something that I don't think that we've necessarily seen from this team so far this year. They've seemed soft, they've seemed weak, they've seemed quick to kind of give up when they concede. So I love the fact that away from home against a team that equally is competing for the European places, we were able to come from behind and show that fight and spirit. Um, I also like the ability that we were able to show we can set up to frustrate. Like I said, formation was not particularly inventive. We weren't doing this cool 3-2-3-2 with players moving all over the place, and Daniel Malen in this uh heretofore unnamed role, sort of off the right, playing second striker to Ollie Watkins. And outside of those set pieces that I called out earlier, we largely stopped them from creating too many chances. Like I said, 3 shots at halftime. So, you know, at the very least, Villa are showing themselves to be tough to play against. Goals against are great so far this year. There have been a lot of stats coming out about how many goals Villa have conceded in 2025 under Unai Emery. So far this season, they've got one of the better defenses in Europe. Now, I don't know that necessarily passes the eye test, but hey, all that matters is how many you concede. And so, I like that Villa showed, hey, we can play a more pragmatic game when we think that it's necessary. Um, Not a ton of bad points that I haven't already spoken about. Don't love that we don't have a backup number 9. Clearly not Mullen. I would be interested to see the Gasson experiment, considering that he played there a decent bit last year, but we'll see what ultimately comes of that, comes of him. And like I said before, still wouldn't say we've been the better team over 90 minutes in a game yet. Still haven't put that perfect performance together. But that being said, it's pretty great to say, hey, we've never looked good over the course of a full 90 minutes and we're on a 5-game winning run, right? So, as long as ultimately I'm kind of on Chris's side with this one now of as long as we're picking up points, I'm kind of good with it. As long as we're picking up points and continuing to show improvement, as long as each game is continuing to get better than the last, I'm good if everything isn't necessarily perfect yet. I do think that we'll get there. So, finally, to kind of close, the larger implication on the season, Thomas Frank continues to never beat Unai Emery. Unai continues to dominate every time he steps foot in the city of London. And we're up to 11th and have won 5 on the bounce. And that looks great going into a Europa League match that I do expect us to win. Chris will come with all the stats tomorrow night, but I do want to at least get my prediction out there. I think that it'll be a 3-1 Villa win. He'll give you all the reasons why tomorrow. And so with that, to kind of quickly close, shout out Big Walt for your comment on the last one. Thank you. Keep tuning in. Keep engaging. Chris owes you a beer. I'll get you a beer next time you're in town as well. And also shouts out to Morgan Rogers. So some late breaking news before this show dropped. Morgan Rogers is supposedly under negotiations for a new Villa contract. I think it's another 5-year deal on top of what he gets. So hopefully that either means even more massive release clause from where he was before, but also that ain't nobody coming in for him now, at least not without hitting that massive release clause. It shows his commitment to Villa. I think finally everyone can shut up about, oh, he wanted to move away this summer. That's why he sucked so far early this season. The dude's played a lot of football. So we can all be happy about that. Let's get him back to his best form. Who knows? Maybe the contract negotiations were kind of getting in the way for him. And now that that's out of the way, he knows his future's settled. He can get back to being the player that we know and love. And that this goal is the start of that. He's had a couple good games in a row now, few assists, a couple hockey assists, and this goal on top. So think despite everything, we're getting back to seeing the player that we know and love. Yeah, I think that's all I got on this here Tuesday night. So Chris will be back tomorrow. Again, sorry that disease running rampant through our households meant that we couldn't be together today to get his opinions, but you'll get his analysis of Go Ahead Eagles tomorrow. And so until that point, as always, up the Villa. Hi, Mom and Dad.